Hello and welcome to our podcast. I'm Dani, and today Great.com talks with Ishrin Davids, General Manager of Ikamva Labantu. If you haven't heard of them, their mission is to harness South Africa's potential through community-led projects. Remember, if you're new here to this podcast, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. Now, hi Ishrin, welcome.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm super happy to talk to you today. It's going to be a pleasure to know more about Ikamva. And let's begin about your origins, right? How Ikamva Labantu came into existence.
Thank you. Ikamva Labantu has a long and rich history of involvement in communities. And in the early 1960s, this was at the height of apartheid, a young woman, she worked as a speech pathologist at one of the major hospitals in Cape Town in South Africa. And she's a white woman. And one day, one of her patients, she in fact, she was assigned to the black section of the hospital. And one day, one of the young children she had been working with was discharged prematurely. And she thought the child would not make it if there wasn't proper follow-up and immediate follow-up. And you have to remember that during apartheid, there were restrictions about people's movements. So Black people were not allowed to be in white communities unless they had passes and they had reason to be there. And similarly, white people were restricted from moving freely into the townships. And she convinced one of the Black nurses to take her to where the child was. And at this stage, she was completely unaware that that townships existed to the extent that they did. She might have known that, there were people living in under-resourced communities. And the nurse took her, and also just to a certain point, because the nurse feared for her own life and her own safety about breaking the laws, took her to a certain point, and she found a way and found the child. And her name is Helen Lieberman. She then saw for the first time how people lived in the townships, the lack of access to resources, to opportunities, poor housing, poverty, the many thousands of children who were in need of care and food and education. And almost immediately started to connect with the women and started working with women around childcare and just looking after the children. And that was really the beginning of a movement of women who would then stand up against apartheid and against the evil and say, we have an obligation and we now have an opportunity to improve our lives, the lives of our children. And that was really the beginning. And throughout this process of working with the women, Helen was harassed by the police. She often ended up in the cell, and often was ostracized in her own community. She eventually lost her job at the hospital for the work that she was doing in townships and for kind of bringing shame to a certain community. And she persevered. She went back every single day. She was 21, 22 years old. And she went back every single day to go and find the women and work with them. And the day that she set foot into the townships was actually the day that those very women challenged her and say, we do not want people like you to come in here and tell us what to do. We do not want people like you to come in and start things and then you leave. What do you want? And she said, and they said to her, do you know what our needs are? And she said, I don't know anything. Tell me, show me, teach me. And that's the ethos today of this organization called Ikamva Labantu, which means the future of our nation. So since day one, since its informal grassroots inception of women becoming a collective of organizers and planners and creators of change in their communities, we have looked to the people to understand, first of all, what are the challenges? And secondly, what are the solutions? What do the people say the solutions are? And she said, I'll follow your lead. And so she's been following the lead of amazing, incredible Black women in townships who stood up and fought for a better life for everyone. And so for 30 years, there was this groundswell of activities across Cape Town and as far as Johannesburg of people getting involved in early childhood development. And that's one of our foundation sort of programs today still, with the beginnings of the work that we're doing. And they would sit under trees and work with the children. They wouldn't have a decent place to work. And what would they do? They would take the furniture out of their tiny little home and teach the kids in there. And in the evening, they would put the furniture back into the homes, and it would be their little house again. And so we begin to see an army of women for whom there were nothing was an obstacle, nothing was a challenge, nothing was too difficult. And often the only thing people need is an opportunity to access, an opportunity to resource. And so she kept on working with them for 30 years, just as groups of women. And the second time she was challenged was when someone came to her and said, so what are you doing about older people? And she said, what needs to be done? And they showed her. And that's how we started the seniors program. Again, by the people in the community, all those leaders, activists, they started our seniors program. They started the early childhood development program. They started what we call afternoon angels. And none of it was started by the organization. None of it was initiated by us. What Helen had access to was resources. So she could bring, financial support. She could bring food supplies. She could bring bricks. Every day there was something else in the boot of a car, a stack of bricks or a stack of rice or whatever it is that was needed to get through that particular day. It was really tough to work then against the police at the time and having to evade them all the time and continue to go in there. But they persevered. They often hid her under the beds or wherever. Sort of sometimes they would cover her face in black shoe polish so that she wouldn't be identified. She would often find herself at great risk, but continued as a naive young woman. Just went there every single day. And for 30 years, this was the case. And at some point, the people said to her, we now should start an organization. People are wanting to fund us, and we now have to become a credible organization with systems and processes that show we can deal with the money that comes our way and we can report on it. And then the people decided this would be called Ikamva Labantu, the future of our people. That would be the name. And so many of the women who started with her, they became managers of programs. It's an incredible story of human resilience. And I don't like to use that word because people don't want to be resilient. They just want to be able to go out and live a life of quality, without all these obstacles. But so many of the women that you came across in the field became managers of the various departments. So they had, it was long before my time, they worked with disabled, seniors, early childhood development, visually impaired, refugees, various, they call them sectors at the time. And so women from the community, women that started with her, were all the founders of Ikamva Labantu. They were heading up these various sectors. And so that went on for another decade or so. And in early 2000, there was a need to look at a transformed organization where we looked at sort of more the policies, recruitment processes, a proper human resources department. So I started at that time in 2000, where the organization was going through a major transformation. And I was then asked to lead that process with the staff. And then we came to a point where we started to employ nurses and social workers and occupational therapists, professional staff, because the needs have changed. And we needed to employ different staff, different qualified staff. So today we work with three distinct groups in the townships: early childhood development, and then we have a department of youth and parents, children, youth, and parents, and then the seniors program, which we are so precious about, because our seniors often they've given their life to building South Africa. They've given their life to the struggle. Today they get a meager pension, government pension, and that pension often is used to look after an entire family, of five children, often grandchildren, because people either don't have jobs or there's some other kind of incapacity. So that's for us is a real flagship program, the care of seniors. That's the fabric of society. And if you fix and maintain the fabric of society, there's so much that can go right from that point. So it's really been an incredible journey of people banding together and working with the most meager resources, from their own cupboards, and just how can we help? Never asking sort of for handouts, but just how can I be of service to my fellow human being? And that's the ethos of the organization. Up till today, we work through forums and committees. So back in the day, the various early childhood development centers would establish a forum, and they would communicate through that forum. And each area would have a forum, and then there would be the big forum where they would problem solve and hold each other accountable. And those are really authentic community structures, because it really is the voice of the people that comes through these forums. Even our seniors, we have 21 clubs and just over 1,000 seniors that come to the clubs on a daily basis. They are governed by a committee, an executive committee, that decide, what they eat, what activities they want to do, how they want the clubs to operate. So Ikamva Labantu come alongside and provide the structure. So we build centers and provide resources and have partnerships that will come in and do activities so seniors can earn an income and augment their social grants, their pensions. But it's really run by the people, by the community who govern it. Our job is to facilitate, catalyze, connect, and walk alongside, but never to dictate and never to impose programs onto communities. And it does come with its challenges in that we don't often have the resources to meet the needs, and all of this is done by sort of serious and fundraising that we do as an organization. We have an established fundraising department, and when funding comes to an end, we have to go back to the communities and inform and consult. That's why something is no longer able to continue in this way, but it needs to scale down. So it does come with the challenge of always having to sort of find the money and the resources to continue the programs. But in and of itself, it's particularly self-sustaining because communities are invested in it, and they work hard to make sure that it does work and maintain the systems and maintain the accountability within the various programs, and hold us accountable all the time, which are often challenged and often asked to come to meetings at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, to come into the townships because they want to meet with us about something. And we go there, we go toward the challenge. It's often how you handle things. It's not always easy. It's uncomfortable, but if you walk away from the challenge, nothing gets resolved. So you walk towards it and you open yourself up to learn and to understand and find a new way forward.
Thank you so much for sharing all this history with us, Ishrin. I think it gave us one historical perspective. Sorry, I'm going to say that again. Thank you so much for sharing this story. Not laughing. Thank you so much, Ishrin, for sharing this story with us. I think it gave us a historical perspective of how Ikamva began, and it makes us see in a different perspective, I would say, because we have talked in this podcast before about these community-led projects, but I think it's the first time I heard this cry for, hey, you're not gonna invade our territory and tell us what to do. We are gonna tell you. And it completely highlights the sense of autonomy that this approach, this ethos that you work on, based on, really means, right? This is what you're looking for. So it's quite powerful. Thank you for sharing all of this.
Yeah. If I may just add to that, often what we say to donors is, before you want to fund us, please come and see the work that we do and come and meet the people that we do the work with. And so we call the people that we work with participants and not beneficiaries, because we often feel we are the beneficiaries of their grace and their courage. They are participants in their own growth. And we often say, always say to donors, before you decide to give us any money, come and see what we do, come and meet the people. And so during COVID, we didn't have, people couldn't visit. And we had Zoom sessions, and we had the mama sitting in her shack or her house in the township and joining us on Zoom and speaking to the donors herself. And often we didn't even have to say anything. We were just there to switch on the Zoom. But they were speaking to the donors about what their challenges were and how thankful they were for the donations, and how those donations are being utilized. And so we really not in any way or at any time do we even speak for our participants. They do speak for themselves all the time.
Now, Ashwin, I know that you mentioned a little bit about the programs that you have, but I would like to learn more about it, because you are covering quite ground. Like we're talking about the whole cycle of life, basically, and there is like different generations being in this collaboration with you. So, could you give us a more insight into how these programs are working right now, and what challenges are they trying to meet, to match with the communities you're serving?
Thank you, Danielle. I'll start with the early childhood development. We all know that the first years of a child's life is essential for building a foundation for a good future, and development and play through that phase of life is really what is needed. Millions of children in Cape Town's township communities, however, do not have access to quality early education. And our job has been to, and again, we don't start ECD centers. We work with already established ECD centers. And these social enterprises are mostly headed by women. And we bring resources such as training. So we train practitioners and principals in best practice techniques so that they run an excellent early childhood development center. We have built a center in Khayelitsha where our training takes place. And in that center, we have what we call a model preschool. Is where we run a preschool. The children who come to the preschool don't pay a fee. But after we've trained the practitioners and the principals, they have an opportunity to practice what they've learned in the preschool, in our preschool, and also observe our practitioners, how they work in our model preschool. And so it's not just about training, but it's about giving practitioners and principal an experiential opportunity to apply what they've learned. And then it doesn't stop there. When they go back to their preschools, we have community-based workers who visit them regularly to assist with the application of the new information that they've learned, and to help with challenges they may have to implement. A lot of ECD centers in the townships are not properly fitted out with furniture and resources, and education materials. And so the challenge is to use what you have and still produce excellent and quality education. That's a very important program for us. It's also recognized by our government. And so what we do is we work with the early childhood development centers to the point where they can access government subsidy. And in order for that to happen, they need to meet various criteria. They need to meet the safe health and safety regulations, fire, health, space. They need to have proper space. And so we help and assist them. Often we find funding to adapt or modify a school so that it can meet the requirements for government subsidy. We work with more than 400 small community preschools. And most of these owners are women who have started these preschools. And often they started out as a means to keep children safe off the streets. The lack of after school care and lack of just general care when parents are out to work. And it's also a place where children can be safe. We started a really innovative project, which is now being rolled out by our own government. It's a registration help desk where practitioners and principals come and they're supported to get to registration process. And this has been recognized by government as a unique and really effective program. Our other program is Child, Youth and Parenting Program. And in that program, we have something that is called Afternoon Angels. Afternoon Angels it's an incredibly amazing and just wonderful program. We came across women in the communities who were looking after children in the afternoons. And so often children after school will be at home on their own because either the parents are out working or they're looking for work or they're trying to make means to put some food on the table. So children are at home and they're in the streets and they are very susceptible to be drawn into gangsterism or drugs or being abused, and assaulted. And so women in the community open their doors to the children. And from their meager cupboards, they cook a meal and look after these children until their guardians and parents come home. And we came upon these women and decided to support them because it was such an important job, keeping children safe in our communities. It's one of the most important things. And today we support 30 women who open their doors to children and support them with training and resources and food. Food is essential for any child to develop. And we now do training with the parents of the children as well. So that's an incredibly important and valuable. And we call them afternoon angels because that's exactly what they are. They become these angels in the afternoons who open the doors. And again, community started, community led. All we do is come alongside and support, and we bring the resources. And in this umbrella program of children, youth, and parenting, we also partner with an organization who support young children who want to finish school. Let's say they dropped out in grade 11, then they go back to do a 4-month stint, or they want to redo their matric so they can access tertiary education. And we partner with such an organization. We provide the venue, we provide something to eat, we provide access to internet and laptop and connectivity, so that for a 4-month period, we have this amazing group of young people who improve their schooling education so that they can apply for tertiary education, can go to universities, and the success rate is incredible of those young people actually entering a college or a university. I mean, education is everything, and an opportunity to education is everything. And you might begin to see that the kernel of all of this is access. It isn't a lack of people wanting to help themselves or to learn. It's an opportunity. It's a matter of access, a matter of connection with resources. Our other program is senior citizens who often, as I said earlier on, look after entire households with their government grant, which is very little. And then there's the added challenge of access to health opportunities, access to medication. We have one of a few, if not the only, community-based rehabilitation program in Cape Town that support older people who might have had strokes to get better. And if somebody gets a stroke and there's immediate intervention afterwards, they can improve the quality of life and live better. But if it's not treated, it becomes debilitating after a while. So we employ nurses and occupational therapists who would go, and this is, I'm sort of jumping around, but this is the program we call, it's the Umulwani program, which means neighborhood friend. And so our staff will go and look for where there are older persons who are bedbound or homebound because of some physical or other disability, and support them to get better, to get access to the clinics, make sure we have a good relationship with the clinics. So there's our people get preferential treatment. So we have established a relationship with the clinics in the area, and so we can collect medication. When medication gets taken to the homes, and once you have taken some, and then we provide the food passes. You can't take medication on an empty stomach, so the food passes help them to eat something, and they take the medication. And off, I used to go with our nurse, and we would walk into a home, and this one incident to an elderly couple, and we walked in, and the woman was lying on the bed, and she was not interested in anything. She wouldn't look up. And the husband, also an elderly man, was trying to cook something on the stove. And we walked in, and the nurse started talking to her, and she was not responsive. And then we realized she didn't even have a hearing aids in. She just didn't have the energy to put those in. And the nurse helped with the hearing aids. And we started talking to her, and the nurse started taking her blood pressure. And by the time we left, she was so lifted. She was engaged. She sat up. The color came back to her face. And the husband was bringing her some porridge that he was making and sort of trying to, and it was a lovely old chat with him, And that's really all that is needed for people to just sort of feel there's hope again. And often people recover to the degree where they can now come to our clubs. We have 20 clubs that we operate in the townships. So we provide transports, we pay the transport to pick up the seniors and bring them to the clubs where they access a range of services, from healthcare to income generation to legal advice and legal support, helping someone to get a deed for their house so that people can't just take it away from them, helping older people to make a will so that when they die, the family knows what is going on. So access to legal support, access to health services, access to fun and activity and joy. And so we have to raise a lot of money to provide the transport. And what's magical about that is that we employ people in the community who then transport. So it's really it's sort of a revival of the local economy. It's more than just bringing aid, but if there's transport needed, it's people in the community that are employed with their vehicles to do the transport. So it's a full and comprehensive approach to developing local economy, making sure people have access to opportunities, and not just opportunities, but to quality healthcare as well, nutrition, and that's a hugely expensive job because everything needs to be paid for. We need to hire enormous amounts of staff. We have a staff complement of 125 people. And that is essential because we do our work through our staff. 90% of the people we employ come from the communities we serve. And that, in and of itself, is an economic incentive, right? It allows someone to earn an income and support 5 other people in the community. And the value of employing people from the community to work in the community is that they acutely understand what the challenges are. And they acutely understand what the solutions are. And they have the ear to the ground so that we always know what is coming, what are the changing scenarios in community. Because the people who tell us are the people who live there. And often, it's not easy for donors to understand why we have such a huge staff complement and why we pay so much money on salaries, but the work is done through the people. They do the work.
Yeah.
Talking too much.
No, that's
Sorry.
right. Well, actually, absolutely. I think we need to pay attention to these things, and donors need to understand that the structure to actually provide this massive care that you're able to do now is huge as well. And actually, thinking about this, Ishrin, for everyone listening to us right now, what are the best ways to help you guys keep going?
I think what we're so grateful for is if people want to come alongside with us and help us with financial support, because really that's the key to our ability to be able to do the work. And if there's anyone who's interested to support us, they may go to our website, Ikamva Labantu, www.ikamva.org, and donate online. We'd be eternally grateful.
We will make sure to add the link to your page into
Thank
this
you.
episode description, and then people can get in touch and learn more about the beautiful work that you guys are doing in South Africa, Cape Town, and Johannesburg region. Thank you so much, Ishrin, for joining us
Thank you,
today and
Jenny.
for giving us a glimpse of Ikamva.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And for everyone listening, also, thank you for staying with us for one more episode. And remember, if you liked it, press subscribe on YouTube or on your podcast app, because that shows the algorithms that this is an important conversation and more people can learn about the importance of the Ikamva Labantu. Check their page, and I see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you.